Before I make my full preservation guide, which I want a little bit more time to really flesh out, I know people are going to be asking what I think of the hero talents and which one's going to be better. And things can definitely change before launch. So I'm willing to give you my opinions now on what I think is better for Raid or Mythic Plus or whatever you want to hear. But I'm also going to give you the full in-depth breakdown of what the talents do and what I like about them, because I think Chrono Warden and Flame Shaper are both going to be viable. One of them is definitely stronger, and we'll get right into that point. So, hey, my name is BowserTheHealer. Get subscribed if you like dragons, healing content, or just listening to me talk about World of Warcraft. You know I appreciate you. Right to the point. I think Flame Shaper is stronger right now in Mythic Plus. I think it's going to be quite good in Raid without a whole lot of work. And I also think it's going to be quite good in PvP. But I don't think it's just better than Chrono Warden. You have to know why. And remember, these things can get nerfed all the way up to launch. So, just so we're clear, Flame Shaper can do more damage or more healing than Chrono Warden on any given day, but that's sort of a, you have to pick. You only get 2 engulf charges, and whether you're blowing up fire breaths or you're blowing up heals to heal everyone, you gotta pick. And you can do one or the other and kind of do a good job at both, or you can do an excellent job on the damage front or an excellent job on the healing front. So it really depends. If we're getting stonewalled in Mythic Plus by damage checks and not killing mobs quick enough, then you might find that Flame Shaper makes that work. If you need more healing over a longer period of time and you can really manage your cooldowns, Flame Shaper's engulf in healing with Dream Breath is out of this world strong. And I'm going to talk about what I like to call breath juggling in a little bit here when I break down its talent tree. But Chrono Warden has consistently good healing. It smooths out the cooldown rotation and really tightens things up. So if you like the traditional style of preservation and you don't want a lot to change on you when you first go to the War Within, Chrono Warden's going to do that, and it's not going to be a bad healing experience. You get good consistent damage from your Chrono Flames, you're going to get extra damage from assisting your allies, and you're going to have cooldowns reduced potentially off of your breath spells, an extra heal over time effect. It's pretty powerful. So I'm going to break down the talents one by one through each tree, but if you're just trying to make a quick split decision and there's been no major changes to the hero trees, Flame Shaper is going to be good. But in terms of difficulty, Flame Shaper is going to be harder. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that before you go diving into the deep end and being like, wow, this is confusing. How do I use this? So let's start with Chrono Warden. Again, I don't feel like this is very far from Flame Shaper in terms of how good it is. And it's sort of an always online hero tree. I think it's going to be appealing to a lot of people. Chrono Flames are a living flame that is enhanced with bronze magic. It repeats 15% of damage or healing you've done in the last 5 seconds up to a value. Chrono Flames are strong. They do a lot of damage, they do a lot of healing, and they're consistent. But remember, this helps with temporal anomalies, this helps with, you know, just spot healing players, and with After Image, where you get these follow-up Chrono Flames on Flame Breaths and Spirit Blooms and Dream Breaths. You actually get a ton of extra damage and healing from this because these are real Chrono Flames. Unlike the tier set that this is based off of, we don't get like a partial living flame, like it's only some of the potency. It's the full potency, making it quite powerful. I really like these two combined. Chrono Flames are nice, and if you haven't seen them, they're quite pretty. I really like the way they look. So if this is something that you are interested in, I think you'll like it. Aesthetically, it's very cool. Warp is a actual dodge. You genuinely teleport and appear somewhere else. You can still use it in place. Reducing the cooldown of hover by 5 seconds is nice, but you can actually dodge AoEs with this. I have dodged over bullets and over lines with this move with 0 issue, things I should have gotten hit by. Is it as good as meta immunity? I don't think so. I haven't tested it with something that like only a demon hunter could say meta immune, but you know I'm gonna try, and I'll report back at some point if I can or not. This is fun, super cool fantasy, super cool gameplay. I really like Warp. And I want to talk about the talent right below it. You can either get Motes of Acceleration, which I think you can have 100% uptime on as long as people walk into them, but these motes give people 20% increased movement speed for 30 seconds after you warp. That's a lot of movement speed for, yeah, almost 100% uptime. So you could give like a slower spec, right? Maybe like a Shadow Priest or something, a ton of movement speed, like almost permanently. That's super cool. I like what this implies. That being said, this one's real busted. Temporality. Warp reduces damage taken by 20%, starting high and then reducing over 3 seconds. Yeah, this is a no-brainer. Like when you're progging like a hard boss, or you're progging, say, like a hard dungeon, it's got to be this one. But the fact that you have both options is super cool. Over here we have Reverberations. Spirit Bloom heals for an additional 30% over 8 seconds. You're going to hear me say this more than a few times, but preservation's biggest issue is that you're always juggling cooldowns, trying to make it to the next cooldown to heal people up. This really does help even things out, because imagine you hit a Spirit Bloom to heal people up because your Dream Breath ran out. Well, normally that would just heal them up, and then the Living Flames would hit and that would heal them up additionally. That'd be great. The Chrono Flames will do work. But now there's also going to be a heal over time. It just smooths things out between your cooldowns even more so. And with some upcoming spell casting reduction that goes on, I really think that there's a ton of synergy here with Spirit Bloom and with your empowered spells and just getting them to rotate a little nicer. In addition, Primacy is going to make it so that you get 3% haste up to 9% haste for each heal over time effect from a Spirit Bloom. This does work with echoes as well, so if you only get one Spirit Bloom out but you had 3 echoes, you still get your 9%. And it's flat haste, so that is almost 1/2 of a power infusion. If you combine this with something like Flow State, where after casting your Spirit Bloom, you will also get Flow State and 10% spell speed and all the other buffs, you are basically PI'd. That is very cool, very strong, love this. Temporal Burst is when you hit Tip the Scales, and no, it's not when you send the empowered spell, it is when you hit Tip the Scales, you're overloaded with temporal energy, increasing your haste, movement speed, and cooldown recovery rate by 30%, decreasing over 30 seconds. When you combine all of the things from Flow State to the Primacy, there's just so much CDR, it is so much haste, you're going to feel on fire for a moment. Tip the Scales almost feels like an emergency cooldown in this regard, meaning using it for damage will be less useful if you know you need it to help you survive something, but that's always been the case with Tip the Scales, and now even more so. I kind of like the idea of Tip the Scales becoming a real emergency cooldown instead of me just lazily sending it whenever I want to. I love this, I think it feels good. When you combine it with down below, Threads of Fate, once you hit Tip the Scales, any empowered spell you cast afterwards gives someone a Thread of Fate for 10 seconds, which allows them to echo their damage or healing spells for 15% of the amount one more time. It's cool, it's nice, but in a pull where I did 30 million damage with one warrior receiving one Thread of Fate, they did on average somewhere around 1 million damage. 1 million out of my 30 million isn't a whole lot, but combine it to 3 people, I don't know, it's some extra damage, it's good. This feels like it might be a little weak, and maybe this could be a little bit stronger on preservation. I feel like that wouldn't necessarily be a dangerous thing to do if they wanted to buff something here, because I think buffing Chrono Flame might be a little challenging. Double time down here in the bottom left, Dream Breath and Fire Breath can critically strike and extend their duration by 2 seconds up to a maximum of 12. I don't like this more than the talent it's on a choice node with, but I think with a lot more critical, like I end up building usually season 2 or maybe more like season 3, this could find some good use, especially in the raiding environment. That being said, time convergence tells you that when you send something that is non-defensive with a 45-second or longer cooldown, you get 5% intellect for 15 seconds. It's nice, it's not too powerful, you can extend its duration by 1 second by casting an essence spell, but honestly, out of the two of these, this one is stronger, but it doesn't feel that impactful. But for some context, 5% intellect is what a augmentation evoker will be giving out in terms of main stat. So you're sort of giving yourself what an augmentation evoker might be giving you in main stat. Does that make sense? It's good. It's not crazy, but it's good. Master of Destiny, casting an essence spell extends all of your active Threads of Fate by 1 second. This is good, but again, I'm not getting a lot out of Threads of Fate, so I'm not sure how useful this is going to be. But in Stability Matrix, each time you cast an empowered spell, Unstable Time Magic reduces its cooldown by up to 6 seconds. This is a very fun ability because getting that cooldown reduction in combination with all the other things smoothing out Preservation and Chrono Warden makes it even smoother. I love this, it feels great, and you just get your spells up a little more often. Kind of a 10 out of 10 talent point for me. I think it's great. Golden Opportunity. Casting an Echo has a 20% chance to cause your next Echo to be 100% more effective. This sounds nice, but I only find one purpose for it, one thing I'm going to use it a lot for, and you can obviously use that 100% more potent Echo on somebody else. And maybe this combines with Temporal Anomaly. There's been some fun interactions with that, so try out some Resonating Sphere Golden Opportunities and see if they're more powerful. But put this one on yourself. If you get an Empowered Echo, give it to you. And the most important reason is that your mastery is Boolean logic, as in it's true or false. So if your percent health is equal or higher than your teammates, you have mastery. If your percent health is lower, you do not have mastery. It doesn't snapshot or anything. So, excuse me, it does snapshot. It doesn't retroactively update. So if you have heals going out and then you suddenly have more health, it doesn't start healing people more. So having golden opportunity on yourself every once in a while to be like, hey, I want to confirm that I have higher health than most players is a good way to keep your mastery up. I don't see too many other uses of this other than niche. Try to use it on yourself, obtain your mastery, and you'll be good to go. And After Image, I already talked about this, super powerful, and it really wraps up the Chrono Warden kit nicely. I think the kit here is great. I have a lot of fun with Chrono Warden, and I think a lot of people will enjoy it. Beginners, new players to Preservation who are just trying to learn the ropes, I feel like Chrono Warden's the way to go. This one's just easier to play with. It works with a lot of the builds that worked in Dragonflight. You're not going to be playing around with a whole lot here, and when you do want to play around, it'll make sense what you're changing or what you want to adjust, because Chrono Warden doesn't massively change your tree in a way that you want to like change your whole build to accommodate it. And neither does Flame Shaper really, but Flame Shaper has some more complexities. So let's finally get into that. On the Flame Shaper side of things, let's talk Engulf. And we're actually going to go straight down the list of all of Engulf's moves, because if I don't explain them all at once, the power of Engulf doesn't make all that much sense. Engulf your target in Dragonflame, 30-second recharge with a 30-yard range. You heal them for blah, or you do damage for blah. For each of your periodic effects on the target, the effectiveness is increased by 50%. Reversions, double reversions, dream breaths, double dream breaths, all of that qualifies. Deep breath qualifies in Kindle, which we'll talk about in a second, qualifies for damage, and fire breath qualifies for damage. It's a lot. Engulf is super cool, and I like the way it works. It just does a lot of damage and it does a lot of healing, but it gets better. Traveling Flame. Engulf increases the duration of Fire Breath or Dream Breath by 8 seconds and causes it to spread to a target within 30 yards. This is, for us Preservation players, going to enable us to do something I like to call breath juggling or dream juggling, where you're going to use Engulf to keep a dream breath alive. That's going to be very important for this last node here, so we'll get to that in just a moment. Burning Adrenaline. Engulf quickens your pulse, reducing the cast time of your next spell by 30%, stacking up to 2 charges, because you get 2 charges of Engulf, and it does 20% increased damage and healing with this node. So it's a pretty nukey ability at this point. But then, Consume Flame. Engulf consumes 4 seconds of Dream Breath from the target, detonating it and healing all nearby targets equal to 300% of the amount consumed, reduced beyond 5 targets. This is the big raid heal. This is the big heal in general. 5 targets. Yeah, this is really good in dungeons. You're going to see me use this in the footage that I show up all the time. Whenever the party's struggling, I simply hit Engulf and health bars go back up. It's a nice feeling, and this is what allows you to juggle. You can juggle a Dream Breath onto a target, spread a Dream Breath to somebody who maybe missed your Dream Breath. It does spread a full value Dream Breath onto someone. So you can use this to say, keep a Dream Breath running at the end of a Dream Breath, and use that player to consume Flame to keep the heals rolling. It's a very powerful tool, and if you want to use it for damage, the damage is unbelievable. However, word of caution, this is a new button. It interacts with echoes, it interacts in stasis, it does a lot of different things. Engulf being that powerful means that there's new combos and combinations to utilize it with, increasing the difficulty of Preservation by a pretty significant amount if you're not already comfortable on it. I'm not saying to shy away from Flame Shaper, but if you are new to the spec and it feels a little intimidating, or you feel like you're not getting any use out of Flame Shaper because you're not thinking about it, Chrono Warden will give you more value until you're ready to start taking on Flame Shaper's own ability. But let's talk about some of the other abilities because they're pretty cool. Trailblazer, Hover, Deep Breath, and Dreamflight travel 40% faster, and Hover travels 40% further. You go flying with this move. It's very funny. It's incredibly powerful, but also like hard to control. So you might find that becomes a little difficult when you're in the middle of gameplay. And if you don't like this talent because it's a little unwieldy, I recommend Shape of Flame. Tail Swipe and Wing Buffet scorch enemies and blind them with ash, causing their next attack within 4 seconds to miss. This is going to be really nice in PvP, I think. I like this. Shape of Flame is great, so if you just don't want to go absolutely flying when you press buttons, you're good. That being said, the faster Deep Breath does wonders for getting you out of problems a little bit quicker. I really like it. In Kindle, Essence abilities are enhanced with Flame, dealing 20% of healing or damage done as fire over 8 seconds. This unfortunately means that when you press Echo, you get a little tiny Enkindle and someone healing for 13,000, which isn't a whole lot to write home about. However, it does do a lot in terms of damage. You're going to be able to hit someone with a disintegrate and then get an additional damage over time on them. And you can continue to ramp this damage up by doing more damage. I got this at 39,000 a tick. That's nice as just bonus damage for me chaining some disintegrates as a healer. I love this. Blossom players, I think you can go crazy with this. You're gonna have to show me. I want to know. The Blossom players, I know you watch me. Let me know in the comments, because I love what you guys come up with. That being said, down here you can also play with it a little bit more. Casting Engulf reignites all active enkindles, increasing their remaining damage or healing over time by 100%. This is powerful for damage. I think that people will find some fun use cases for this, but I find Expanded Lungs, Fire Breath's damage over time, and Dream Breath's heal over time being increased by 20% is a bit more useful. It's more healing, it's more damage. What's not to love? It helps with your downtime windows, because if you don't have Engulf up, you're gonna be very happy that your Dream Breath is doing work on its own. So I really like this one. Both seem totally viable to me. I'm gonna err on the side of cautious with Expanded Lungs more often than not, but they're good. Conduit of Flame, critical strike chance against targets below 50% health is increased by 10%. Woohoo! A little bit of execute in the baggie. I'll be real with you, this is nice for healing and for damage, but until we're building a lot of critical, I'm not going to see this feeling like the most powerful node in our list. But just wait for when we get to, say, Season 2 or Season 3, and you can get a lot of critical. An extra 10% on a target below 50% means a lot of clutch healing and a lot of clutch damage. I like the sound of that. I play a lot of Prez in PvP. That's going to get some work for me, I'm sure. Titanic Precision. Living Flame and Azure Strike have one extra chance to trigger Essence Burst when they critically strike. I'm gonna be real with you, we still don't get Essence Burst from these Azure Strikes. Please ignore the spiders I'm throwing at the target. So because we don't get Essence Burst, Azure Strike, even when it crits, just can't give us an Essence Burst. That being said, Living Flames having a higher chance to give us a chance at an Essence Burst is nice, and what it's doing is it's rolling the dice one more time. Maybe this is feedback I gave them, because I told them the original description of this was terrible, but when you say have an echo out on a target and you Living Flame them, you're essentially throwing a Living Flame, and then the echo is another real Living Flame. Anytime you see a Living Flame out in the wild, whether it's Leaping Flames or it's from a set bonus, it's from Chrono Warden, whatever, those are real Living Flames. So every single Living Flame that gets tossed is going to roll a 20% chance at an Essence Burst. Now, with a single Echo out and throwing a Living Flame, these two Living Flames are rolling for 4 Essence Burst chances, right? Because each one's going to roll the dice 2 times, which means that I rolled 4 instances of 20% there and didn't get an Essence Burst. There's another one. Luck is still not on our sides, but this does mean when you throw out a Temporal Anomaly through a whole crowd and you hit Living Flame, there's a very, 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 very high chance you're going to get your Essence Burst or double. In the bottom right, we have Draconic Instincts. Your wounds have a small chance of cauterizing, healing you for 30% of damage taken. Occurs more often from attacks that deal high damage. I feel like both the talents in this node are good for PvP, but this seems like the really important one for PvP. I don't know, I feel like I'm going to really like this, and if it occurs more often from high damage attacks, big burst windows will hopefully be mitigated to a degree, helping me survive. Life Cinders, however, for us PvE enjoyers, is a little broken. Renewing Blaze also applies to your target or one nearby injured ally at 50% value. You can have a tank heal 50% of all incoming damage over the next 8 seconds by simply casting Renewing Blaze on them. Or this will just randomly find a target who needs healing. Ho boy oh howdy, that's a lot of healing. Imagine a tank going into a pull and getting slapped by like a double or triple pack, tons of damage coming in, and they're struggling to stay alive and they gotta pop cooldowns, and you hit them with a Life Cinders and you've just guaranteed that half of the incoming damage is going to get healed at one point or another. With tanks and their mitigation, that's a ton of value. That's gross. This adds to what makes this spec so good for the pugging side of things. And that kind of concludes Flame Shaper. I love it. Again, I've played it a ton already, and having that extra utility of Engulf and being able to kickstart heals whenever I need it, juggling Dream Breaths to keep the party alive while I'm waiting for my cooldowns to come back, it's a ton of fun. There's more combinations and ways to play it than you ever thought of before. The problem is that it does require more brain power, and I don't mean that like as a meme. I mean that like you already had to think a lot on Prez. A lot of people find this spec intimidating because there's a lot of different ways to heal it, and they're not always wrong. There's no like one right way to start a Prez pull. There's just going to be preference in what people enjoy doing and the damage profile of the pull and everything, which means you need to be comfortable with the spec to heal on it. So Flame Shaper adds one more layer to that. Now, it's not an unbelievably deep layer, but it does have a decent amount of depth to it just in this engulf ability and everything that augments it. Again, we're back to the beginning. Do you want to use Chrono Warden or Flame Shaper purely on fantasy? Pick whichever you like. I think both are going to be good. I don't think Heroic Raid is going to be like gate kept by Chrono Warden or Flame Shaper, right? Especially after a week or two of gear. I think everything's going to be viable here. I'm not worried about it. Mythic, on the other hand, for Raid, Flame Shaper's probably going to get picked more, but there are some scenarios where I could see Chrono Warden doing better when, say, there's more focused healing needed on an individual player and Life Cinders wouldn't get the job done. For Mythic Plus, Flame Shaper again wins if you're really good and you want more damage and healing, but you're picking more damage or more healing. Chrono Warden's got both, so the consistency is going to be very good. And for those of you who are pushers, unless you're going to a world record key, my prediction is that in a top 0.5% key or higher, one of these might be less viable than the other and actually like harm the viability of timing the key. But I don't think it's going to be the hero talents that strictly prevent us from timing keys, especially into the 1% territory. And top 1% of Mythic Plus players was like 3,300 something this season, or for like Dragonflight Season 4, like 3,300, 3,400. So unless you plan on hitting 3.4k IO, 3.2k IO, I don't think you're going to run into these problems. And even more so, I'm the kind of player that will go out of my way to prove that I think both of these are viable by playing in those levels of keys with both of these with pugs with no problem. And well, I can't confirm we're doing top 0.1% keys when we're doing 10s and beta right now. It is a little tough out here. The keys have been a little difficult. Gotta be real with you. Both have worked. Both have been fine. I have found solutions to my problems in both hero talent trees. So if you're really on the fence, go for fantasy. If you want the most amount of healing and damage value, Flame Shaper will give you both, but you got to pick one, and it's going to be another layer of difficulty. Chrono Warden, it's a little more consistent, it's a little bit smoother, it's smooth as butter, and it's going to be much easier to pick up if you're new to preservation, or if you don't want things to change too much on you. You want to like acclimate to the new dungeons in a way that is like easy, and you're not learning new abilities on top of new kicks and routes and crowd control. Maybe Chrono Warden's for you. Maybe it's easy mode, hard mode, but I think both will vibe pretty well at high level play. In PvP though, I'm going to guess it's Flame Shaper is more powerful, especially at a high level, but consistency versus like hard choices, I don't know, that's going to probably depend on the level of player. But because I'm not like a very experienced PvP player, we'll just see how my prediction does, and we'll see what some top players say later down the line. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this was insightful. I'll have a full guide coming out soon on all the things you need to know about preservation, bottom to top. So if you have a friend who's trying to come in and learn the spec fresh, I'm going to have a very chunky, very deep guide for them to go through. Thank you all so much, and I will see you in the next one.